Good morning, everyone. This is Jason Dean coming at you live from Film Fanatic headquarters. So, this show is going to be about the new Dune. Well, actually, it's hard to believe this is like 2 years ago. 2021, this came out. Now, we just started a new year. So, Denis Villeneuve, the director and writer for this film, is easily one of my favorite directors. I think he's one of the greatest living directors right now. He's made so many incredible movies. The first movie that I saw of his is Prisoners. Was Prisoners. I own most of his films. Pretty much own all of his films on Blu-ray, and I easily think he's one of the most incredible creative forces in Hollywood right now. I think he can jump in and out of different genres, from making suspense films to science fiction films, also where he can also, I feel like he also incorporates elements of horror in certain films of his. Prisoners is just amazing. I first saw that, and that starred Hugh Jackman. Just an unbelievable movie. Also, films like The Arrival. I think one of the greatest science fiction movie that's come out in recent time. Easily, probably one of the greatest science fiction movies ever. I think, for my money. He also directed this movie called Enemy with Jake Gyllenhaal, which I feel in his whole kind of canon of films is probably one of the most overlooked or underrated of his films. And it came out, I believe, after Prisoners, and it's called Enemy, and it stars Jake Gyllenhaal, and it's kind of like a film, almost like a modern day film noir kind of thing, but it also has this very sci-fi thing going, and it deals with like obsessed fans and doppelgangers, and just an amazing film. The atmosphere in that movie is just so incredibly creepy. And also, probably my favorite film of his is Sicario, which stars Benicio del Toro. That's like probably my favorite Denis Villeneuve film. And that movie dealt with the whole drug trade between Mexico, the Mexican government, and the U.S. government, and all of the shadowy things that happen behind the scenes that involve the CIA, drug trafficking. And it stars Benicio del Toro, and it's just such an incredible movie. That movie is just, I think it's one of the most intense experiences that you can have watching a film. I mean, it's so incredibly suspenseful, and the atmosphere is just unbelievable. I love that movie to death, and I have that. Like I said before, I have all of his films pretty much on Blu-ray. And Sicario, I feel, is just like that movie is just like kind of unparalleled on how suspenseful that film is. Unprecedented. And he also made, again, it's amazing how consistent his career is. And I feel like his body of work, he hasn't been really a real active director for when you think about it for all that long, but he seems to put out a movie every couple of years, and they're all like really diverse. They all have this real diverse nature about them. They just all have this like epic kind of scope to them. And every movie I just feel is like kind of highbrow art. Like it's just amazing. They're all just amazing. And so probably the most ambitious thing that he's done aside from Dune was, I think, the sequel to Blade Runner 2049, which came out a few years ago, which starred Ryan Gosling and Harrison Ford, which is just an incredible movie. I just think the kind of the audacity to make a sequel to such a classic film, Blade Runner, directed by Ridley Scott, and for it to be a real kind of continuation of that universe where you're given something really new and fresh was pretty miraculous, and I feel like he nailed it. I mean, just knocked it out of the park. That movie has real mixed reactions, I think, to it. But Blade Runner 2, the first Blade Runner also had that too. It wasn't a very it was a real polarizing film for some reason, and I think because of the nature of it, because the film is just so, it's kind of a downer. It's a real, dystopian kind of view, based on the classic Philip K. Dick book. So when it was announced a few years back that he was going to be basically remaking Dune, I was just like, wow, because I'm like, wow, you couldn't put something more ambitious and something that has that kind of potential to be just a real spectacle in better hands than Denis Villeneuve. And the original novel, written by Frank Hoover, is probably it's pretty much my favorite science fiction book of all time. I've read that book many times. I usually read it every couple of years again. So, and I do like there's actually like about four versions of that film that already exist. And I actually do like the David Lynch version that came out. A lot of people don't like that movie, and even David Lynch is not a fan of that movie. He kind of felt that there were too many constraints on him or from like the financial aspect, and also pressure from the studios to make that film, and he felt like he never really got his vision put on that stage. But I actually really like that movie. And then there's also a version of Dune that came out fairly recently, I believe, with William Hurt. That's actually really good, and I think it was a Sci-Fi Channel movie or production that was actually really good. And then they also made as a series off of the movie, but the movie's actually really good. It has a real, there's a cool like, it has its really cool technical aspect to it where I feel like it's almost better than the David Lynch version, because it feels like to a degree the visual effects are a little bit stronger. It's a little bit more closer to the book, but it's actually pretty good, and the series is actually pretty decent too. And then I believe there's also another series that was done, and another movie based on Dune and the other books, that was a little bit more of a low budget thing, that was a TV movie that was actually pretty good. So there's quite a few things in the whole kind of movie universe that are related to Dune, or that are remakes, and there's actually some good good quality stuff out there, good quality things. I was really bummed that I could not see Dune in the theater. I absolutely love this movie. I didn't see it till it came out on DVD. Denis Villeneuve has been very outspoken that he, intentionally created this movie for the the theater going experience. Like, it was designed for that. And watching this on Blu-ray, it literally was watching it watching it for the first time. And when I started watching it, I forgot. I've only seen it once, and it was probably about, yeah, it was a year ago since I've seen it, and I was just like, I forgot how brilliant the cast is for this film, and the level of actors, and the quality of who is on. It's just who's in, the quality of actors involved in this film. Timothy Chalamet, Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, Oscar Isaac, Jason Momoa, Stellan Skarsgård, Dave Bautista. I mean, just amazing. And they just totally nail these roles. The scope and the music composed by Hans Zimmer is just incredible. I think it's probably his best film score. I really love his work with Christopher Nolan, particularly around Interstellar, and then also The Dark Knight. Amazing. He, I mean, he's definitely one of the crown jewels of as far as in the world of composers. Just incredible. But I feel like this movie, this version is easily the definitive version for Dune, and and a true representation of the universe. It's incredibly accurate to the book, and it's so incredibly close, but yet it doesn't feel like it's copying the book. It's got he took a little bit of license with some of the things, so it can give you a little bit of a different experience and a little bit more of a fresh experience from just say it being solely based on every aspect of the book. And I think that was a really great, fresh way to approach something that is pretty complex. Like it's a dense book. It's very character driven. But on the other side of things, visually, this film just has like this epic thing that is just literally out of this world. Like the battle scenes and the technology used and the cinematography is just mind blowing. And I definitely feel like it's definitely the best rendition of the story and of this classic book. By far, it's it's truly. I wish I got to see this film in IMAX. Like I can only imagine what that would have been like. I mean, talk about a transcending experience. And sadly, a few years back, Johann Johannesson, who is a German composer, he worked on all of Denis Villeneuve's films, and I think right from the beginning of all of his body work, the last film I think that he worked on was The Arrival. But The Arrival and then also Sicario, I just feel are just like just crown jewels. Johann Johannesson died a few years ago, but he's worked on all of the Denis Villeneuve, and since he passed on, Hans Zimmer took over. And very different style, very different set of tools that he uses to create sound, but very good. But Johann Johannesson would have been it would have been something else to have like seen what he would have done for this film. I think it would have been truly out of this world in every way, shape, and form. Shape and form. I just think it would have been unlike anything. But I still feel like Hans Zimmer did an incredible job with this film. And again, this film, seeing it on Blu-ray, it's easily for me like seeing it for the first time. It's only my second time seeing it, and I'm incredibly excited to see now that there's going to be a part two coming out. That's going to be coming out, I think, this year or last or next year. I think it might be late this year. They started filming the second part this past summer. So I can't wait. I can't wait to see where this will go and what this will lead to. I mean, it's again, Denis Villeneuve is easily one of the greatest directors around. If you haven't seen any of his films, you could pick any of them. They're all just so equally of such a high caliber level. But yeah, and if you're a fan of science fiction and like really good suspense based films, he's the man. I mean, just unbelievable. He creates such a great atmosphere that is just so rich and dense and complex. A true Denis Villeneuve is truly one of the greatest living directors. Like I said in the beginning of the show, everything I feel like that he's involved kind of turns to gold. Whatever project. So I'm really excited to see what this next part two of Dune will be like, and also to see what other great films he'll be bringing to the world. So just incredible. And again, I own all of his films. I own all of Denis Villeneuve's films on Blu-ray. And every time I watch them, they're just all pure escapist experience at like the highest level. And they're just such great films. I remember the only film of his I think I saw in the theater was The Arrival. And I saw it in a really good theater when it had come out a few years back. And I went into it really cold, and I kind of melted into my seat at just how powerful and emotional that movie is. And so unpredictable. And that's the other thing about a lot of his films. There's not, it's never the way the story is, or the way the plot line is, or the way the character arcs kind of develop. There's never like a formula, a typical formula to it. They all have different shades, all of these different characters, and there's always this level of where you don't really see where things are going, but the suspense to all of his films, and how all of the characters in all of his films, and particularly with Dune, they're just so, everything is so flushed out that the minute you see a lot of these new characters on the screen, at least from my perspective, you're just drawn in and you automatically have empathy towards them, and you care about them, and you're you're in it to win it, to see where this story will go. And can't say enough about Denis Villeneuve. So highly recommend seeing this movie, Dune 2021, especially on Blu-ray if you get the chance. It's a pure it's a monumental achievement, I think. And again, with any of his films by Denis Villeneuve, you can't go wrong. In particularly, like I said, probably my favorite of his from his body of work is Sicario. Now that I'm talking about it, I think I'm gonna have to watch it again. But so good, so good. And this is just, for me too. This is also, this version of Dune is easily the best version of the classic novel written by Frank Hubert. Easily. So this is Jason Dean. Thanks everyone for supporting this channel. It's been great that the numbers have been going up. So I really appreciate the love. If you like these crazy videos I do, please like and subscribe to my channel. And we will see you next time. Peace.